When creating sessions, there's several different methods when you first see the Quick Start dialog box. We can create a blank session, or we can create a session from a template. Creating a session from a template is very nice for settings that you like, and we'll get into how we create these in a moment. But I could go in and say I want to do a music, and I want to choose to create one with, let's say, rock. And now we can go in and choose session parameters. We hit OK. And then we go in and choose it to save it on our external audio drive. Very straightforward. Now the second method for creating a session is just simply doing the Command N, which is under the File menu. And this is where we can again choose the session template, but we're going to create a new blank session. Now, creating a new blank session requires several things that you need to think about before just simply hitting OK. You want to make sure your session parameters are adequate for multiple projects that are being sent for that client. In other words, don't have one session set at 24-bit, another one at 16, another one at 88.2, another one at 44.1. You want to keep them as much the same, but it's very important to use broadcast wave. Why? Because that is the universal standard for compatibility with multiple operating systems as well as digital audio workstations. So wave is very useful. Broadcast wave stores even more useful information. For example, you can store metadata, the time it was recorded, all kinds of unique information that can be held directly in the WAV file for further use. AIFF is useful still. It's more of a native for a Mac, but you're not going to find yourself using that too often for compatibility with multiple systems. You can use it, but you'd have less functionality. Now, as you've learned from earlier courses, 24-bit affords a lot more dynamic range. If you recall, it was 144 decibels of signal-to-noise ratio. 16 has a lot of quantization error, has a lot of issues. It's there for compatibility from older Pro Tools sessions, so you can open them up in the lower resolution. But 24 is definitely the standard for Pro Tools sessions created in the industry. So take advantage of that. Huge advantage in dynamic range there. Sample rate largely depends on your audio interface. Your interfaces will give you up to 96 kilohertz as well. Now, don't immediately go to 88.2 or 96K unless you absolutely have to. You'll notice that CPU becomes an issue when you start dealing with a lot of tracks at that higher resolution. So 44.1 or 48K is fine, but you do need to make sure you're understanding which sample rate is used for which medium. 44.1 kilohertz standards are used mostly for audio CDs, music production, whereas 48K is used mostly for radio, film, broadcast. Just be careful because they do matter. You do not want to have to convert one audio file format between 48 into 44.1 or vice versa. You just lose a lot of resolution. If you recall, that was called interpolation from an earlier course that gets introduced to the file. So let's just keep this at 44.1 right now. And the I/O settings are where you're able to choose the labeling of your new session. If you choose last use, this affords you the ability to keep the labels from the last session. So you may have labeled an input track. Say you had a preamp that's available in your system. You could label that input according to that preamp. Let's just keep it on stereo mix for right now. This allows everything to be set to default label systems. So you have input number 1 stating that it's input number 1 and so forth. Notice that you can choose a lot of different I/O labels according to the control surface you're working with, as well as going into surround sound systems. If you don't see this on your setup initially, you will be seeing this when you start going into Pro Tools 9. Again, these are not huge differences for right now. So we can hit OK. And then choosing the location is probably one of the most fundamental, important aspects of creating a session. Don't just simply store it on your desktop. Don't store it on your local hard drive if you can. Why? Because you don't get the performance from your session when you do that. You want to have it on external drives so that you really are splitting up the tasks between these two drives, your internal drive for the application, where your external drive, or audio drive in this case, is really running all the media for the session. So keep your titles as small as possible. We're just going to call this first session. You may even find yourself using acronyms, whatever the situation best fits. So we'll hit save. And then if you'll notice on my drive, if we go into my hard drive, I'm going to go ahead and open up Drive. You go into the first session. You'll notice that everything is kept in there. Everything is intact within that one session folder. So the name of your session is actually used for your session folder. This is very important, and you want to keep things on the top directory if you can. This does allow you to find things quicker. So don't save session folders within session folders. It makes it very hard to find things. You may find yourself saving sessions within a folder that's labeled after a client. That becomes very useful. So take advantage of these different techniques for creating sessions. But probably more than anything, whatever you set is what you get. You cannot change the session parameters once the session has been created. I can't stress this enough. So if you do not set the session parameters correctly, there could be a lot of consequences later down the road that may not be apparent at the beginning. So be very careful and do your homework and know what parameters are best for that situation.